Michael Jackson's death will likely be focusing on the powerful sedative Diprovan, otherwise known as propofol. There are numerous reports of numerous bottles of the drug being found at Jackson's Los Angeles home. Last week, authorities did remove drugs and other evidence from the mansion. But what exactly is Diprovan? Well, here's the answer. It is one of the most widely used IV drugs used for general anesthesia. According to the FDA, it should be dispensed only by a person properly trained to administer anesthesia. And the FDA says equipment to provide artificial ventilation, supplemental oxygen, or someone who knows how to give CPR properly and immediately should be available. Dr. Howard Neerman is the head of anesthesiology from the University Hospital's Case Medical Center in Cleveland, and criminal defense attorney Dmitry Gorin is a former prosecutor joining us from Burbank. Welcome and thank you both for joining us. Dr. Neerman, I'd like to sort of start with a quote from one of the nurses who reportedly knew Michael Jackson, may even have treated Michael Jackson, and she came out and said this.
I said, this is a very serious medication. I said, you keep telling me you want to be knocked out to go to sleep. The problem is, being knocked out to go to sleep, you might not wake up.
There's no indication to use this medication as a sleep aid, is there?
Not at all, Dr. Nancy. This is a very powerful anesthetic, like the nurse said, and it's for use in controlled areas such as the operating room and the intensive care unit only. This is not an at-home drug.
Which raises the question, I think, that most of us have on the tips of our fingers. I wouldn't know how to get this medication if you told me you wanted some. I don't know how to write a prescription for it. I don't know how to get it other than stealing it, frankly, out of the operating room. How do you get this stuff?
And you're quite right. That's exactly how it probably would be obtained here in the United States. It is a drug that's stocked in the hospital formulary, in the pharmacy rather, in outpatient surgery clinics, and you can't write a prescription for it. You cannot go to your local drugstore and get this. So somebody would literally have to steal it from there. Now, whether this is available online or not is a different story, and I can't answer that.
That's an interesting question. Dmitry, talk to me a little bit about the investigation. These are definitely outlier physicians. I think I have to speak for the whole medical profession. But what's the DEA looking for?
Well, they're looking for, number one, the possibility of the drugs being unlawfully prescribed to Mr. Jackson, and essentially the possibility of some sort of conspiracy of providing him with the drugs.
And what do you mean when you say a conspiracy?
Well, along the lines of this case, I looked at the Anna Nicole Smith case, and in that case, the two doctors who administered and prescribed the drugs to Anna Nicole Smith were charged with conspiring to provide the drugs to her. So arguably, there could be, number one, a pharmacist who's got access to the drugs, and number two, a doctor who actually administers the drugs to Mr. Jackson. There could have been a number of individuals involved in providing the drugs to Mr. Jackson. So I know in the Anna Nicole Smith case, a conspiracy charge to furnish the drugs unlawfully was in fact filed in state court.
So you're talking about a team of rogue players.
Yes, that is correct. In other words, just as the doctor just mentioned to us, it's hard to obtain this drug through lawful means. My wife, who happens to be a pharmacist, has never seen this drug issued in her pharmacy, and she'd done hundreds of prescriptions a day for many years. So it looks like maybe the DEA is looking for a team of people. Maybe it looks like a number of doctors were involved in treating Mr. Jackson. There were several search warrants that were authorized by a judge this weekend, which means he found probable cause there might have been a crime or evidence of a crime in connection to these doctors, either at their offices or their homes. And so the DEA, as well as local law enforcement, LAPD, as well as the Department of Justice, are looking at a number of players, which is why I mentioned the possibility of a conspiracy to provide these controlled substances to Mr. Jackson.
Howard, we know that Michael Jackson had a lot of plastic surgery, and most plastic surgery in this country is done in outpatient surgery centers. Seems to me a really soft target if you have the right inside player.
Oh, sure. There's certainly could be connections made, and if he's had experience and established relationships with people in some of these outpatient centers, that's always a strong possibility. That could be where the Diprovan was obtained.
And concierge medicine, where you pay a certain flat rate for access to a physician 24/7, is a legitimate part of American medicine now. But boy, it's taken a hit for a sort of doctors for hire?
Well, again, as was said earlier, these are rogue doctors or rogue healthcare professionals, and they're really practicing outside the scope of their medical license. And when that happens, it really has usually an unfortunate consequence.
Dmitry, do you have any idea, is there any word in Los Angeles that some of the same people who have been indicted or implicated with Anna Nicole Smith might be the same players in this case?
Yeah, I have not heard of that. I would be very surprised that now that they are subject to indictment, that they would actually have been involved in this case. If I was the lawyer for any of the Anna Nicole Smith doctors, I would have steered them clear of having any contact with prescribing medicine, especially to celebrities. So I would be very surprised that it would be the same doctors. But as the other guest just mentioned, there are these concierge doctors, and I would think in LA there are a number of them who provide special care to celebrities and high-profile individuals. So I'm sure Michael Jackson had his pick of the doctors that would be available to him.
And unfortunately, in this case, it looks like access and money is all it took to get, unfortunately, a lot of the wrong stuff in the wrong hands. Dr. Howard Neerman, Dmitry Gorin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.